35 of Bill Cosby's accusers are publicly speaking out. Today, New York Magazine released its latest issue, and this was the cover. Black and white photos of nearly 36 women who allege that Cosby assaulted them. Their allegations span nearly 3 decades. The women's ages range from their 20s to their 80s.
Bill Cosby mentored me. He gained my total trust. And then he drugged me without my knowledge. He raped me. I wouldn't call him crazy, excuse me. Not once did I ever think that Bill Cosby was crazy or insane. I felt that he was very much in control of his behavior. He was very calculating. He was very manipulative. He knew exactly what he was doing.
It went on for maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes. But it was the longest 5 minutes that I ever experienced.
Cosby has not been charged with a crime and has denied allegations in the past. Joining me now is the author of that piece, senior editor at New York Magazine, Noreen Malone, staff writer for Slate, Jamel Bowie, and veteran prosecutor Paul Henderson. Noreen, let me start with you. It's an incredibly provocative and important cover in the context of this conversation. But one of the things that's most remarkable is it focuses our attention on the victims for what feels like the first time, whereas up until now, it feels like all of the attention has been on Bill Cosby. Was that sort of the point in putting together the cover?
That was the whole point of the cover. The idea actually originated with our photo director, and she just saw that picture in her head. A number of women had been coming forward individually, and she knew that having everyone in one place would just have so much more of an impact. Was it hard to get the women to come forward and be photographed and tell, in some cases, their stories on videotape and to the press? So these were all women who had previously made a choice to come forward. Everyone had spoken before, and I think that most of them had done the hard work of deciding the first time. There were some women who weren't immediately sure that they wanted to do it. We actually had 4 people in the last week decide that they wanted to join up after the Bill Cosby 2005 depositions were made public, so they changed their minds. But I think for most people it felt like a relief to go public, and they really saw value in being photographed together and standing together. Yeah, the fact that there are 35 of them just underscores, I think, one of the things that seems most unconscionable and unfathomable is that this number of women are alleging sexual harassment and were ignored. Yes. This many women, and theoretically more, for so long. And the challenges of coming forward, especially when the person you're alleging was a sexual assaulter, is a very, very popular national celebrity.
I mean, this cover, like, literally made me catch my breath when I saw it. And I've been following the story really closely. I knew the number, but seeing everybody, and seeing the women centered was just an incredibly powerful way to do it. I think it's amazing that there's very little, the details are new, the depositions are new, but the accusations aren't. And this all started because a male comedian, because Hannibal Buress decided to put a throwaway line about it, a joke about him in his act, and we all started talking about it. That's happened before. Tina Fey and Amy Poehler have done that in their work, and it's not sparked what happened here. I think part of that is having space to discuss sexual assault in the media that didn't exist a couple of years ago. Major outlets do that, and social media has made it almost impossible to silence people entirely.
Jamel, to that point, one of the accusers, Tamara Green, said in 2005, Bill Cosby still had control of the media. In 2015, we have social media. Is that what has changed here?
I think it is, because it's not just a couple people hearing the accusation. It's not just 100 people hearing an accusation. It's now thousands, tens of thousands of people seeing these accusations, hearing women's stories, kind of getting all the information at once. And you know, when you look at the full suite of information from sort of previous cases to the present, it's really at every point it was overwhelming. And so the combination of overwhelming evidence that Bill Cosby did sexually assault these women, plus the sheer, broadcast power of social media really completely changes the game. There's sort of no way that Cosby and his team could have kept this under control like they had in the past. And I'd also add that I think part of it as well is the degree to which Cosby has lost some of the goodwill he had in the 90s and the 80s due to sort of his turn as a not a social commentator, but like a social scold.
A scold, yeah.
The pound cake speech was very alienating and very much turned quite a few people against Cosby, irrespective of sort of any knowledge about these allegations. And so when you have this figure who has lost some of his stature in the, over 10 years, hit these old accusations plus this new phenomena of social media, and you have really the recipe for what we're seeing.
Well, and also the unsealing of the deposition from 2005. Paul, I'd ask you, what do you make of Cosby's attorney's strategy to effectively defend the Quaalude use, even though Cosby himself wasn't actually taking any of them?
Well, it's complicated because, the Quaaludes actually became illegal back in 1973. So after that date, you're no longer allowed even to possess Quaaludes. But again, they're really limited in terms of accountability with the law, either criminally or civilly, and that's because of the statute of limitations. Prosecutors are hampered or limited both by the passage of time and the limited physical evidence that may exist. And so right now you see his lawyers trying to do everything they can on the civil side to prevent as many statements from coming out as possible. And that's because all of the laws now and all of these suits, you see this proliferation of defamation suits, right? And the defamation suits speak to the harmed reputation. And that gets around the statute of limitations that's typically associated both in the criminal analysis and in the civil analysis, but it only speaks to the reputation damages that many of these victims have to prove, and they still have to win and prove a lawsuit in defamation. And that's why you see his lawyers fighting so hard to keep all of his statements and any evidence or admissions that he may have made from out of the public audience and out of the hands of these victims who are coming forth and want to use those statements in their defamation cases.
Noreen, with the exception of maybe one or two of the victims that you profile, most of these women are not stars in the way that Bill Cosby was. But we talked about the psychological harm, and I think it harmed to their own reputations as they think of themselves. What stood out to me is, in these accounts, these women felt so much shame for so long, and that at this moment they talk about, I'm paraphrasing, but this sort of sad sisterhood that has emerged among the alleged survivors of Bill Cosby's sexual assaults.
Yes, I think that even just knowing that there were other people out there made it easier for these women. For years, they hadn't even had language to talk about what had happened to them. In the 60s and 70s, date rape as a term didn't exist. Acquaintance rape didn't exist. And to have sort of, a lot of them used language about having, bottled it up inside of them, and that it all came flooding out, and they were able to do that together. That was major for them.
To that end, Jess, I mean, we live in a country in which 68% of sexual assaults are not reported to the police, and 98% of rapists will never spend a day in jail. Do you think that Cosby actually opens the door to changing the way we think of sexual assault?
I mean, it is a terrible upside. But the more that you talk about what happens when there is major sexual assault, either on campus or in the military or in your daily life in Hollywood, the easier it becomes to talk about it. So I think that is what we can take. The strength of these women, their ability to find each other and tell the story, I think is immensely helpful. It's so much better than when we are in a place where that can't happen.
It is worth mentioning, though, Jamel, that part of the reason this all, the person that set all of this off wasn't a woman, wasn't a victim, was Hannibal Buress, a male comedian.
Right, and one of the women in the piece said as much. She said that, we've been making these accusations, we've been saying this and telling our stories for so long, and it finally took a male comedian to get the ball rolling, and she was very angry about this, and I very much sympathize and agree with that anger. It is genuinely outrageous. I mean, I think Hannibal Buress is a funny dude. I like his comedy. But it is outrageous that it took Hannibal Buress making a joke for this to resurface into the public eye and for people to begin to take it seriously unlike they had in the past. And I would hope that if we can draw any lesson from any of this, it's that when, when people accuse others of sexual assault, when these accusations come up, that we should take them seriously when they happen and pursue them when they happen, instead of sort of letting time pass by and letting time, in effect, shield the perpetrator.
Paul, Bill Cosby is now going to be forced to testify in the coming weeks. So what new information are we expecting to learn in his upcoming deposition? And is he going to be forced to answer a lot of the unanswered questions from the 2005 deposition?
He will be forced to answer some questions. We don't know what those answers are. And keep in mind, those are going to be guarded answers, because most of the lawsuits that he's facing right now are, as I said before, defamation lawsuits, because those get you around the statute of limitations to the reputation challenges for the victims themselves. And they don't speak directly to the assault in terms of accountability, but those victims are going to have to prove and show that they were injured, and there has to be a monetary amount to measuring what those injuries are, which is why I think in the future you're going to see more and more of these lawsuits, because it's the last recourse for these victims who are standing together in solidarity, that want to make sure it's not about the dollar amount. It's about accountability and making sure that the audience and the public and the world knows what happened to him, what happened to them, and what kind of person Bill Cosby is. I think on the back end is where we see the real accountability, and that's in the public forum. So the court of public opinion, where Bill Cosby's ability and goodwill is diminished, and his ability to make money, earn money, or generate himself as a goodwill ambassador is diminished or goes away because of these lawsuits.
Well, the New York Magazine piece is certainly a major piece of evidence to submit to the court of public opinion. Noreen Malone,
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for your time. Jamel Bowie and Paula Henderson, thank you as well.